Hello, Math 1060 class. Let's do some problems from probability and odds, starting with number 1. And this is really from number 37 from page 674. And in this problem, we're supposed to cross a purebred white snapdragon flower with a purebred red snapdragon flower. Create the Punnett square for it. Well, if it is a purebred white, it will have 2 white genes. A purebred red will have 2 red genes. So the trick is to take exactly 1 gene from each parent and consider all 4 possibilities. But notice in this case, all 4 offspring have exactly the same genotype. And it says in this problem that flower color does not dominate, as happens with pea plants. So when you mix a red and a white, you don't get a red or a white, you get a pink. So that's part A. Part B says, what is the probability of getting red, white, and pink flowers in the first generation? Well, clearly, if you just consider the red flowers, 0 out of 4 of them are red. So the probability of the red is 0. The probability of their white is also 0, because there are 0 white flowers. But what about the probability of their pink? Well, 4 out of 4 are pink, so the probability is 1. That means the offspring are certain to be pink flowers. Let's do number 2. Cystic fibrosis is a serious inherited lung disorder. And in this particular problem, we're supposed to assume that N is a normal gene, and lowercase c is the cystic fibrosis gene. And the problem is come up with a Punnett square that will demonstrate what happens when you mix 2 carrier parents. Now, if a parent is a carrier, that means they have a normal gene and a cystic fibrosis gene. So if we construct the Punnett square for that, well, notice the first offspring will have NN, the second one is NC, third one is NC. It's only the last one that will actually get the disease, because you have to inherit both recessive genes, in this case, to get cystic fibrosis. So that is the Punnett square. What is the probability that this child will have the disease, is part B. Well, you can see that exactly 1 out of 4 of the offspring have cystic fibrosis, so that is the probability. And they didn't ask this question, but they also could have asked us, well, what's the probability that the child is a carrier? The answer would be 2 out of 4, or 1/2. The probability that they're totally normal is also 1 out of 4. Let's do number 3. If the odds against E are 5 to 2, what is the probability of E? Okay. So let me show you how to convert from odds to probability. I usually like to set up a little Venn diagram. Here is set E, and if I say the odds against E are 5 to 2, there are 5 ways that E can't happen, and there are 2 ways for E to happen. So you can think of that as the number of outcomes. All right, so just from the Venn diagram, you can see that if I'm looking for the probability of E, it's just the number of things in E divided by the number of things in the sample space. And in this case, it's just 2/7. So the probability of E is 2/7. Next one says if the probability of E is 0.45, so they give us the probability of E this time, what are the odds against E? Okay. Well, let me just show you how to do this one. If you want to convert from probability to odds, either for or against, you just take the ratio of 2 probabilities. If I'm looking for the odds against E, that's really the probability that E doesn't happen divided by the probability that E happens. So that's the formula. And, well, they give us the probability of E is 0.45. So what's the probability of E complement? Well, the complement rule says that if you're trying to find the probability that something doesn't happen, subtract the probability that it does happen from 1. So that is the complement rule. That's something you should know. So I end up with 0.55 divided by 0.45. Plug that into a calculator. Convert it to a fraction, and I get 11 over 9. But remember, you can also write that as 11 to 9, like that. And they're both equivalent. And the last problem on the list, suppose the probability the Yankees will win the World Series is 0.3. So the probability they win is 0.3. What are the odds in favor of them winning? Part A. So again, we're converting from probability to odds. So since we're looking for the odds in favor of winning, that's just the probability they win divided by the probability they don't win. And once again, they give us the probability they win. So what's the probability they don't win? Use the complement rule. Just subtract that from 1, and that'll give you 0.7. So notice it reduces to 3/7, but that's the same thing as saying 3 to 7. And that's probably how they want you to enter it on the homework. Part B, what are the odds against the Yankees winning the World Series? Well, if this is the odds in favor, the odds against is easy. Just switch around the letters. The other way to do that is just say the odds against is the probability against divided by the probability they actually do win. And that will give you 0.7 divided by 0.3. But that's the same thing as 7 to 3 or 7/3. So just 5 problems in this section.